Exclamation point.
Susie, take it away.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm Susie Beckman. I'm with the RiverCog. I'm a relatively new person here. I joined in March. Thank you for joining us to discuss the need of our veterans and what the towns are now responsible for doing. I'd love to go just around the room quickly and find out. I know we have a lot of our CEOs here, but we might also have representatives who have supported veteran services in the past. So if we can go around the room, we're going to start with Mary Ellen.
Hi, I'm Mary Ellen Barnes. I'm the Social Service Director for the Town of Essex.
Carl Fortuna for Selectman, Town of Old Saybrook.
Eliza Lopresti, RiverCog.
Susie Beckman, RiverCog.
Kevin Armstrong, RiverCog.
We'll go online now. Vincent, can you introduce yourself, please?
Vincent Bystrick. I'm the Senior Vice Commander of the American Legion, and I'm the commander of Middlefield, the American Legion.
Thank you. And then we'll go to Killingworth. You've got a contingent.
We do. I'm Nancy Gorski, the exiting CEO, and with me is also
Eric Couture, the incoming CEO.
And I'm Richard Mason. I'm the Veterans Representative and Commander of VFW Post 1467 in Old Lyme.
Okay, great. And then we'll go to Irene. Maybe Irene doesn't need to be introduced.
I don't think she can hear us.
Maybe she can't hear us. Okay, we'll move on to Bob from Haddam.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Bob McGarry, First Selectman, Haddam.
And then to Cindy.
Well, Cindy Legnart, incoming for Chester.
Vouchers for you. At some point, you should just show me.
And then we have Jim Irish.
Morning, everyone. Jim Irish from Middlefield, Selectman.
Okay, and then Ryan Curley.
Good morning, everyone. Ryan Curley for Selectman Portland.
And John Board.
Hey guys, John Board, Executive Assistant to the First Selectman down here in Durham. Look forward to working with our new CEOs down the road.
And Joyce.
We muted you, Joyce.
Oh.
I just asked for that. Oh, there you are.
Joyce, can you introduce yourself?
Or is that Angus or Carol, maybe? Using Joyce's.
Followed by pound.
She's trying to use the phone.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, I remember. That's Deep River.
Okay.
Okay.
From Deep
We
River.
know Joyce is from Deep River. Okay. I guess first and foremost, you could bring up our slideshow, I guess. But I guess we need to know where everyone is in terms of what you have going on in your towns and whether or not there's a significant interest in doing a joint committee. So that's the first thing we need to answer. But we've done a quick, someone in the waiting room.
That's the phone.
Okay. Oh, okay. Joyce may have joined us by phone. So welcome. Let's go to the next slide and we'll see. Thank you. So the agenda today, I just want to run through what the statute and the requirements are, the responsibilities of the Veterans Committee or the representative that each town needs to have. And then we'll hop into a structure of a multi-town committee, and then the requirements to create a multi-town committee, and then next steps. So the first couple slides will be pretty quick, and go ahead, give them thanks. So the way I read the statutes, and please interrupt if you have a different interpretation, the towns shall, which means this is a requirement, you either need to have a local or regional Veterans Advisory Committee created by town ordinance, to serve the needs of your veterans in town. You need to appoint a paid director of municipal veterans services or appoint one or more municipal veterans representatives, either paid or volunteer. If your town has already done any of the above, you have met the requirement. However, you may still want to get involved. I know that Essex has someone in place, but you may still want to get involved in a joint veterans advisory committee. Let's flip to the next slide. Does anyone have any other interpretations of the statute? Is that pretty straightforward? Okay. The responsibilities of the committee has to be, and these are all may. So the committee doesn't necessarily have to provide all of these services, if I'm reading this correctly, but these are some of the services that the committee should consider providing. Coordinate the activities of public and private facilities that are concerned with veterans reemployment, education, rehabilitation, and adjustment to peacetime living. Cooperate with all national, state, and local governmental and private agencies in securing services and benefits to which a veteran or his dependents may be entitled. Use the services and facilities of the veterans organizations so far as possible to carry out the purposes of these responsibilities, and encourage and coordinate vocational training services for veterans. So again, that's a list of things the committee may do, or your individual town representatives may do in serving the veterans. All right, next. So I guess this is a point where we need a show of hands, or there could be some discussion about where the towns are right now and what your interests are in possibly creating a multi-town committee. Is there a general consensus in the room that there is an interest in a multi-town committee?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I have a question. In the first slide, must every town, if you are not going to be a multi-town committee, must you adopt an ordinance?
No.
Because that's the way.
Okay, so that was just
But
no.
only you must adopt an ordinance if you're going to do a regional.
Right, committee.
But not if you're gonna go solo.
I don't know if you need to actually, the way I read it, if you're going to have a committee, whether it's in your town or multi-town, you need to have an ordinance.
That's how I read it, but it seems like if the ordinance is if you don't have a representative already in place, that if you choose to have a committee versus just that veterans representative, that committee is established by ordinance. You can keep it in-house in your town, or you can go within a multi-town unit.
Yeah.
From at least the interpretation I got out of that the only ordinance that would be needed is if you decide to go with the committee version.
Any other thoughts on that? Anyone else?
Quick question, John here. I know I've been going back and forth with you, Liza, but do we have any template language for ordinances that might make it easier for our boards of selectmen and whatnot to adopt any regional language or local language?
We could certainly look into that. I actually pulled something out of one of the towns had decided to create an ordinance. So let me look at that, and that's something that we could pull together and help the towns with, I think, as the River Cog, as we move through this process.
And is this statute effective immediately?
I guess October 1,
first.
so it's, this was supposed to be done prior to this.
So, right, and I understand it's a statute with there's no penalty, but obviously we are all looking to comply, and veterans are an important part of our community, so, I mean, I can tell you right now, I think, we'd be interested in a multi-town. I think it might even be more effective, in terms of regular meetings, and, if there's state funding, it could be through the COG, we could use COG resources. So,
Well, and that's a question too. Is it, if it's going to be the entire region, maybe it could be considered a piece of the COG, but that's a COG decision, right?
Yeah.
The board would have to make that decision. And then, if some towns want to go out on their own, then we have to determine, the makeup of the committee, if it's going to be just some of the towns, and whether or not the COG is actually involved in supporting that in some way. Any other thoughts from anyone? Does everyone have a representative currently? Yes, I'm seeing.
I'll be honest, we have a representative, and the only way I found out about it was looking through our list of committees yesterday on a different matter. And so it gives you an idea of how much I've interacted with that person in my 4 years as first selectman, so. But I would, and also chip in that I think a committee, to me, a regional makes more sense because we don't need 169 individual towns trying to coordinate all the benefits and everything else. I know those were May's, but makes more sense to me to do it on a regional basis of some sort.
And this is Nancy from Killingworth. We do have a regional veterans rep, and it's Dick Mason. He's here with us. But I see the value in combining towns to see to be able to share resources, manage events. I see this as a good opportunity.
Yeah.
This is Jim Irish over in Middlefield. I agree with what was just said. I think having a resource that would be available to offer information to the different towns, a centralized resource that could do that would be very, very helpful. I know, Vincent, do you agree with me, or?
I agree with you, Jim. Yes.
Does that also come down through the VA? Do you get information disseminated to the veterans administrators in the towns for that? I don't know if that's me or not.
No, you're fine, go ahead.
You want to answer that?
Killingworth? Are we on?
Yeah, we're on now.
Yeah, Richard Mason here in Killingworth. So I've been the veterans rep in Killingworth for the past year. And there was veterans training back in June. And veterans rep training back in June, 169 municipalities were invited. I think 88 showed up. And I also sit on Congressman Courtney's Veterans Representative Council every other month. And being on that council allowed to get a lot of information from potential employers, groups that want to help vets with different issues, whether it's financial or homelessness or whatever. So there's a lot of information that's disseminated to veterans representatives. And the question is what do the veterans representatives do with it? For instance, here we meet with the veterans or have an opportunity to meet with the veterans at the library every month. And that's scheduled. And we have guest speakers that come from the VA. Veterans fill out forms. Most of the problems that veterans representatives encounter are veterans that have immediate needs for some kind of an issue. It's a homeless issue, it's a financial issue, whatever. And they just need to go to the veterans representative as the first line of defense to find out, what do I do next? Who do I call? How do I contact people? And I think if we had a council, if we had a committee of a number of people, whatever the number is, that could meet and share experiences, it'd be just outstanding.
Any other thoughts? Mary Ellen, you feel the same way?
I mean, I think it's important for the municipalities to have some say in the setup, of course, but also having a designated municipal worker. The veterans are wonderful and they are volunteers, but I find that you want to make sure that there's a really good communication between the veteran service contact person and, for example, your social service representative director, because there are going to be calls that come through your town hall that you want to answer immediately, or if there's an immediate need. And also social service directors will also know about energy assistance. Are they eligible for renter's rebate? Are they eligible for other state programming that's above and beyond just veterans benefits? Because I think there's more that we can offer than just the veterans. And then on the flip side, veteran service reps have more to offer than what just a social service director does. So it's really important that the communication stays open and that we have the resources. And I do think having a regional council does help with that, getting that information where you get a little bit from you and a little bit and pick at each other's brains once a month, whether, you know, sometimes that's the best way to get your information.
Any other thoughts?
One of the things that we're doing here in East Haddam is we're actually trying to work on our social services to be more complete and holistic in regards to whatever social services are out there and available. So we have a youth and family, and then we have our senior center. We have somebody who runs the fuel bank. We have a clothing bank. We have a personal products. We have a variety of different things. What happens is, and even in the schools, so what happens is a child walks into the schools who looks disheveled and doesn't look well cared for. We find out through the school that home life is not as good. They don't live in a very good place. It's not, you know, they need food, they need this. So what happens is then we realize that that child needs more services than just help with cleansing, you know, but it's because they live in a house that doesn't have heat, you know, and then they don't have food. And, you know, so this is why we're trying to do this holistic approach, because it's like trying to play whack-a-mole. You know, somebody will show up at the fuel bank, but they need food too, or they need heat assistance and all that. So when you talk social services on a grand scale, you know, you're right. It's not only our veterans, but at the same time, our veterans are equally as important. So again, you know, just by having this meeting today and listening to what people have been doing or haven't been doing, I realized that I need to get my vet rep to those social services meeting, because we can't forget about our vets. And at the same time, the vets, there might be people in our social services realm that are vets that don't even know that there are veterans services that they can get beyond what they can get at the town level. So it's definitely worthwhile to have this regional approach, because there are people that slip through the cracks, and those cracks are huge for those folks. They really are. So, you know, I think that all in all, I would encourage every town to have their own person for vets, just for the simple fact that they still have to bring the information back to that population within your town. So if you go regional, you actually are creating a bigger problem, because you have more people for that one person or a few people to get in touch with. So, but it would be good for everybody from each town to come together on a regular basis and then share what they're finding or what they're not finding, or what are the gaps, or what are the things that we can do through the VA. Maybe there's something we didn't realize was there from, you know, what the gentleman from Killingworth said, that he goes to the, you know, the statewide meetings. So all of that I think is really good. And I think sharing the information is most important, and it'll serve more people that way.
And I'll just add, in Portland, I attended that training, I think twice. One as town clerk and one as first selectman. And although it's beneficial, I got to be honest, you know, it's been a year and a half. I can't remember, you know, a lot of what I learned at that training now. And so, you know, towns like Portland, when this comes up, when there is an issue, and as someone said, it is usually homelessness or an immediate concern or crisis that a veteran is facing. It would be nice, I think, if the town of Portland, for instance, were to have a dedicated veterans liaison, but that also worked in a network of other towns as well, in a committee basis, so that that person, that individual, had a pool of resources to go to, I think would be beneficial.
Any other thoughts from anyone?
Has anyone done look at what compensation might be for an individual, either on a state or a regional level? I know I at least have done some digging in terms of what other municipalities pay their local veteran representative, but I don't know if anyone has anything else.
Ours is a volunteer position.
I know there's a volunteer in Essex.
Volunteer.
In addition, and then Mary Ellen does social services work. Anyone else have a paid person on staff?
My youth and Heather McNeil
Okay,
is our person, and she's our youth and family services director. She does it within her job. It's not an additional stipend or
Yeah.
anything.
okay, it's part of her duties.
John, out of curiosity, what did you look at for compensation?
So the average that I found is a proposed stipend of $2,500 a year. That's just specifically, and I did a little job description write up to propose to my incoming first selectman. But once again, to answer your question, Ryan, $2,500 a year as a stipend.
Anyone else have any data points on what you're paying people, or if you have just volunteers?
Volunteer in Chester.
Okay.
Volunteer in Portland, but like I said, I mean, you know, the town clerk, I was going to ask our town clerk to attend the training in June again, but, you know, youth and family services director as well typically handles social services like that.
Okay, so it sounds like we have consensus that there is definitely enough interest to move forward with looking at how we would develop a multi-town, a regional committee.
Yeah, with a template for an ordinance for the
Yep.
towns who want to do it, to pass it.
I'm sure we can find something.
Yep.
Yeah.
Megan will.
Right. And then
maybe that ordinance should say you know, have an option, you know, gives the town the option. I'm sure we could fiddle, I can probably fiddle with the language if we get a template.
Okay.
So.
And then there have to be, the statute does mention MOUs, so there will have to be MOUs between the towns that are participating. And then the cost sharing is one of the items that needs to be specifically identified in how the costs will be shared, if there are any. So I guess there would be a question about whether or not, and these are things to think about. I don't think these are things that we're going to solve today, but will there be a stipend paid through the regional committee to folks? Or does each individual town pay their own or give a stipend to their own folks, and those folks then are just representatives that come to the committee meeting? Will there be 2 seats for each town, one for social services, one for a veterans representative? These are all the questions that we need to be thinking about. So if we're moving on, if we want to move forward, what are the next steps? We need to know how many people, how many towns want to be participating. So I guess that's a survey that's sent out?
Yeah.
A question, just to see who wants to
I mean, I
get
think you have to
involved.
draft some kind of proposal for the selectmen and the board of selectmen to look at.
Mhm.
I would say
I think we need to work on you know, I'm hearing 2, maybe 3 technically different models, but on a council model, you either have something along the lines of the way Rivercog is set up, where the towns provide a rep who shows up to the meetings at their option. But that doesn't affect what the CEOs do for the town directly, as opposed to the council is you know, so in that model for this, you would have a regional meeting of the town's veteran services representatives, whether that's a committee, somebody from a town committee or an individual under the current ordinance or statute. But then the other one would be, all right, no, we are establishing this regional entity that will be responsible for all of this stuff and passing some information and or dictates down to the town. I think we've got 2 very different models on how to do this. You know, for that one, certainly we'd need an ordinance, but if it's the council is just a meeting place for the town individuals, then you don't need the ordinance unless your town is a committee town.
Yeah, I agree with Bob. I think you're probably better off. I mean, for those towns that don't have a representative, you know, ours comes from our VFW. They're already active within the town at the VFW level. They could just interact with the town or be the person that somebody who calls the first selectman's office and or the town clerk's office, and they need veterans. I have somebody to call at VFW to say, can you help this person? So that's what it would necessarily take. It could be, you know, and then that person can take it a big or small that they want. But to Bob's point, to have that regional meeting where everyone gets together and shares what they do and how they do it and the problems and everything else that comes up, I think is at least the way to start it, as opposed to making it additionally so formal with an ordinance that we are now required to send somebody to this meeting every month or 2 months or whatever it's going to be. So maybe we start and let it kind of organically grow. And I think, you know, we serve one vet, we've served many. So in that approach, take it a little slower so that we don't have to create something else that we have to take care of.
Yeah, I also viewed it, even if we had a multi-town committee, I viewed it as more a repository of information than something that is dictating to the towns or even adding costs. I wasn't envisioning that at all. And, you know, maybe it's an add-on to the COG meeting. After the COG meeting finishes, every quarter or 3 times a year, the regional committee meets to share resources and, hey, what new statutes are out there? And that can either be in 2 forms. It can be, you know, my veterans person coming at 11 o'clock 3 times a year, or maybe it's me because I'm here and I bring the information back. And you know, if we have a regional committee, the first selectman or his designee, you know, so if I'm here and it's convenient for me to be here, or Heather or someone else wants to come. So in either model, I see it as being information sharing. And I know Sam and everybody here at the COG is way up on every little law that's being passed out there, and they might, you know, everybody here on the screen, you know, we're not paying attention to every little thing that's going out there. And I think the COG could flag statutes or resources that might be available to the committee. So I'm not opposed to a regional committee. I think as long as if we set meetings, maybe the meetings are quarterly, so they're not burdensome. I don't see any stipends necessarily being paid. I'm not, but I just see it as more of a information sharing and information giving, and resources.
So it sounds like we need to do a couple of things. Number one is we need to identify the towns that are interested in participating. And then if we go the route that Irene mentioned, we're kind of going slowly. So those towns can just identify who they have as their representatives. And then we could start having meetings. The other question is, what is the COG's role in this? Does the COG have a role? Who's going to be calling the meetings? You know, we'll have to set up the executive committee so someone has those responsibilities, unless the COG board wants to have that become a part of the River COG services.
I'd like to point out that I believe the whole purpose of this ordinance or this legal change on October 1st was have the towns focus. That's the point of the whole thing, is help the veterans in need. And if we're doing fine or we better, then we should try to focus on how we can do better at that. In some towns like Killingworth, they have 2 or 3 veterans in need a month. Sometimes we have 10 veterans in need a month. Towns, places like Groton might have 30 or 40 veterans in need a month. So I think it would be good to share best practices, maybe get the veterans representatives. I noticed that we have about 7 that are part of RiverCog in the various communities. Maybe to get the veterans representatives to get together with other people and share, like, what do we really need to do better to help veterans in need faster, quicker, and more efficiently.
And to the point of what the role of RiverCog might be is, if it serves as sort of a locus or meeting location for getting the resources, having those conversations happen, that seems like the natural for RiverCog to be involved, because you guys all are this sort of regional sharing network, and that information is clearly where that is going to go and be disseminated from.
If there's a regional informational committee, does that satisfy the requirements for towns that don't have a veterans rep?
No, that's a good question.
It sounds like towns have to have a veterans rep.
Yeah, if they're not gonna have an ordinance to be part of a committee, they need to have someone designated, either paid or unpaid as a volunteer. That's the way I understand it.
So the towns that don't have a rep currently, if they join the committee, then they still need to come up with a rep to satisfy, or not.
Maybe
you know
not
what I'm saying?
necessarily. The way it sounds, like if you have a regional committee, it doesn't require that every town have a representative.
Right.
It's up to that regional committee to come up with, I believe its makeup, and the scope of services, the way I understood it.
Okay.
It wasn't dictated, as far as I could tell, in the statutes. You're reading?
Yes, and the veteran service contact person was established 2 years ago, at least 2 years ago, with a state statute. So I guess my question was, I'm assuming that perhaps towns didn't all embrace having a representative, and hence this is an option to not have that representative. So do we know how many people within the COG have an actual representative in their town?
I don't right now.
Because that might be some information
So
that
that's
you'll want to have, because it'll really decide what you see in this council's purposes. Is this purpose to these 17 towns to form a council so they don't have to have a representative? Or do you already have 17 towns with a representative and this is just an advisory board?
Quick
Okay, so
question.
go ahead.
Sorry, quick question. As I'm looking at the statute here, does the if we go the regional route, does the representative need to be a veteran? Because the way that I'm looking at it, it says the director should be a veteran or have veterans experience, but not necessarily the representative to a regional. Correct me if I'm wrong, if anyone has 27-135 in front of them.
The veterans representative in each town needs to be, but I think the way they're drafting this idea is maybe a higher level person in the committee would need a veterans representative, would need to be a veteran. I'm a veteran.
The only qualification, it seems to be, either a veteran or have practical experience handling veterans. So if somebody, I'll throw a hypothetical, who works at the VA, but never served, they would be qualified, I think, to be this veterans representative.
But so once again, a hypothetical here. Theoretically, couldn't we have our social services director who already deals with some veterans issues serve as a representative who has quote veterans experience? Is that too general of a question, or do you follow me?
I think that's a good question.
I mean, I do think some towns did appoint their social service director as their representative.
Well, Old Saybrook did, you know, Carl just said that theirs definitely is.
So theoretically, from Rivercot's perspective, having a social services director, as long as they currently deal with veterans issues, would fulfill the regional representative role. Correct.
It seems to me that it would, but I could be corrected at any moment in the future.
I think it depends on what the practical experience is, and that's kind of a granular how much experience is, you know, youth and family services manager or social services handler have with veterans issues on any given basis. That's a moving target, I would presume.
Yeah, as a practical matter, I don't know who is enforcing it. There's no penalty clause to it that I can see. So I think as long as you have someone that you can reasonably argue meets a requirement of practical experience and who is effectively delivering the services in your town, no one's going to nitpick that.
I'm gonna say that's the key right there. As long as somebody's doing it, making
Yeah.
sure veterans are taken care of, then that's what the point is, I believe, of this legislation, is to make sure that our veterans are taken care of. So
That's right.
whoever does that effectively is quite honestly irrelevant as long as it's being done.
Yeah, I know. Honestly, I would argue if someone came into the office and said, well, your veterans representative wasn't a vet and has no practical experience, as long as they're getting things done, I'd say, thank you, leave my office. You know,
just the veterans representative.
when the veteran services police show up with the handcuffs, then I'll be worried. But until that point, as long as services are being delivered as needed, that's what we're trying to do here.
Yes.
So it looks like we have an additional person. Town of Cromwell.
Is that you, Tony?
I don't know if you want to.
It's Amanda.
Hey.
It's Amanda, Tony's assistant. He's not able to be here today, so I thought I'd fill in for him.
Great, thank you.
Do you have anything you'd like to share, Amanda?
I'm sorry, the sound cut out, so I didn't hear anything for a little while.
No, I'm just wondering if you have anything you want to share related to.
Not at this time. I'm just kind of listening and taking notes.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, so moving forward, as the COG, we could.
I'm sorry, this says my internet connection's unstable. I can't hear.
Okay.
Just moving forward. So maybe the first step is for Rivercog to just send out essentially a survey to each of the towns, the CEOs, to find out what, if you have a veterans rep who's serving as a veterans rep and you're interested in either a regional committee created by ordinance or a more loose regional committee for those folks you already have serving your veterans within your town, to just share resources. And then we'll get an idea of what people are really looking for. And then after that, I guess we'll go one step at a time. Like Irene said, we can move slowly on this. At least we're moving forward and we can show some progress. And as questions come up, please share them with us and maybe we'll be able to answer them at our next meeting. So I think we should have a next meeting holidays are coming up. Is everyone willing to come back again in January to maybe discuss this a little further?
No problem.
Yeah, okay, all right, then, we'll put out, how does, 11 o'clock on, what's the, I don't know, what's today, a Tuesday?
9th, 16th?
16th? How does January 16th at 11 o'clock work for people? We'll get it on everyone's calendar and then we'll put that out as our next date.
The 16th?
Yes.
And Vincent, if you would want to put your email in the chat, I will include you as well. I think everybody else's email I have.
Okay. You want to take it now?
Yeah, if you put it in the chat, I can just grab it from there, or you can just tell me.
It's Virg, VIRG, AND, Vin, VIN, @gmail.com.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you all very much. We appreciate your input as we figure this out together. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Have a great day.
Take care, everyone.